Exactly what, from your perspective, should bank executives do? Is there something like a 100-day action plan?
Dirk, I would rather call it a mindset action plan. Yeah, the banks have to start thinking about this as venture capitalists would, right? And really thinking about investing in a set of options where they make small bets and then follow up with behind the right options, following up for the capital as required, as opposed to betting behind one or two options in a grand scale. It almost have to also take a perspective of a long term, right? Venture capitalists tend to think about the 7, 10, 15-year horizon. There's a similar thing that mindset has to change, where it cannot be a run by the quarter mindset. The other thing that I think we notice a lot of is a lot of the banks are getting to this mindset of going to the Silicon Valley, the accelerators, the incubators, almost in a bus tour, right? And that best tool may give them a spark, may give them an idea, but will not turn them into A-star investors overnight. And they have to think about that.
I think that's right, Nadeem. Take a couple of examples. Citibank has created a venturing group, which allows them to go out into the marketplace and identify opportunities to venture with companies to make acquisitions. They've also created an innovation group based in Singapore. And the innovation group has allowed them to innovate with new ideas with their customers and internally. And they've recently worked with Coca-Cola, for instance, to create a simple payment system that has the need for no cash. BBVA have also created a fund that allows them to go into the marketplace and purchase digital reinventions. They've recently bought Simple, an Anthemis company, and brought that in as a mechanism to create a new blood of innovation, a new source of innovation internally to BBVA.
We are seeing a lot of banks setting up these $100 million, $200 million venture funds throughout the world. And especially, as you mentioned, the BBVA deal buying Simple last year, a lot of banks now just saying, I just also want one of those. However, there's no silver bullet. There's not one really successful organizational model which we should recommend. First of all, of course, it depends on the bank, on the financial services company, but there's a continuum of different organizational model which probably will fit to the existing capabilities and culture of the bank.
Banks shouldn't just look within financial services. Over the past decade or more, pharmaceutical companies suffering from a lack of R&D internally have actually looked outside of their companies for new ideas and for innovations. Take, for example, Roche. Roche took a strategic focus on oncology, created a group of about 100 people with expertise in venturing and understanding the ecosystem of drug development around oncology, and brought in innovations to the group to drive the top line of the business.
I think, Richard, that's right. Take Amazon as an example. Right? Jeff Bezos is famous for talking about his ability to be able to take a longer-term perspective than his competition, his 7, 10 years perspective, which is differentiated in the marketplace. And at Amazon, it is everyone's job to think about innovation. It's no longer just about the top guy that thinks about innovation. So at Amazon, they made it the learning and failure as part of the day-to-day routine. Yeah? It's okay to fail. And they have incorporated that into their culture, into their behaviors, in terms of learnings and so on, which is very important. The banks are not going to become financial Amazons overnight, but they have to start learning from other institutions like that, right? To really think about what innovation means and how they can incorporate that into their current structures. But they all will have to also think about who are the right people with the right mindsets that to bring in that don't exist in the bank today. Bank executives need to change their mindset, but as importantly, they need to change their ecosystem that they exist in today in terms of how they partner, how they communicate, and how they approach the marketplace outside in general. Most of the executives at the banks tend to be future takers. Yeah? They tend to think about the future in a passive way, in a defensive way today, right? And I'm generalizing, of course, right? But there are clearly pockets that are thinking differently, but as a general statement, that's what banks are doing. The disruptors tend to be, on the other hand, future makers. They are really driven by the opportunity that's available to them in this new landscape. And they have the faith with the right model they can make their business models work in a very different way.
For banks, this is not going to come naturally. They're going to need to change the way they operate. They're going to need to change skills. They're going to need to change culture. They're going to need to change from the way that today they operate with business cases, with in-year ROI and MPVs, to a very different way of investing in opportunities, much more focused on customer experience and how they can truly change that experience for the customers and in the strategic areas in which they have chosen to focus.
Management teams have to open up their culture for new digital influences. And they have to do it fast. They have to do it quick. We are just at the beginning of this new cycle. And there's still so many innovation opportunities out there. And at the end, banks can decide whether they just want to monitor, observe, or whether they want to be part of that game.